HBO has confirmed that they are in preliminary discussions having some sort of Watchmen property or series with Zack Snyder being involved.
There's not a whole lot yet to say on this. I mean, even the news out there is... I mean, HBO followed up on a couple of the articles and literally said, we have been in talks, there is nothing else to say at this point. I think what does warrant musing or pondering on is what would they do with it. So you could have Snyder go through and redo the 12-issue actual book.
Try to at least produce it.
Yeah. Try to do it more to a T, or more to the actual comic. More to the story, and do something along those lines. The other two options are a bit scarier, and that is follow up with stuff that never occurred, or, and I never read them, but they were there was like one that was considered decent, but they were not well received.
I refuse to read them.
There were a series of prequel Watchmen comics for each of the main characters, basically, that were released by DC. I believe sometime around the time that the Watchmen movie came out.
No, it was after.
After.
Before Watchmen was 2012.
Okay, so before Watchmen, but to kind of cash in on the new popularity of the book, because, well, what are you going to do with a book that's complete from A to B when you read it? Well, you don't do a sequel, you do a prequel. And there's fear that that's what is going to be done. And you add that with you add Snyder's... If you add Snyder's usual level of...
ham-fistedness.
Yes, I was going to say delicateness and sarcasm, but with his ham-fistedness, I mean, you're going to get something that was not well received in the first place, and it's going to be made worse.
Here's the thing with Zack Snyder. In all seriousness, he's not a terrible director.
Tell you what, Dawn of the Dead remake, okay.
He knows just enough to be dangerous, and that's the worst type of director. So with Watchmen, he knew enough to try to be faithful. And he, to his credit, tried to lobby for bigger budgets. The sets they built in Vancouver, the streets in New York looked pretty damn good. But there wasn't enough money to do it properly. But they tried. The effects were pretty good. So he knew enough to follow the story closely, but not enough to follow it as closely as it should have been followed. That's the problem. The problem with Watchmen... and you might like the movie, but I will say from all the people I've encountered, 95% of people that liked the movie never read the book. And I'm one of those people that I'm not going to be a total snub. I didn't think the movie was terrible. I just think it was okay compared to a masterpiece. It's really bad to direct a masterpiece material into an okay movie or a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Or it was entertaining. Oh, I got something out of it.
But Watchmen, that's kind of your wording. Watchmen, sure, you need the movie to be entertaining, but Watchmen was supposed to be something that made you think.
Yes, and that's the problem. The movie did make you think, but it sort of switched what you were thinking about in some degree. Deconstruction of superheroes. That's what Watchmen from Alan Moore, who has no involvement in anything anymore, has no control of the property, unfortunately. That's what it is. So, one of the main things that Snyder screwed up in the Watchmen movie was making the fights cool. That was when you deconstructed superheroes for the Watchmen came out 85, 86 came out. So from the less than 50 years before that, fights were always cool. Pop, zow, in the face, we knocked out the Joker. In Watchmen, the first fight scene in the movie is in the alley fight where you have an out of shape Night Owl 2 and the in their street clothes Silk Spectre 2 fighting for their lives against a violent gang, and it's brutal, and it's not brutal to be cool. We're talking.
Right.
We're talking.
You're talking about it in the book.
In the book,
you said
yeah.
In the movie. I just
want
to
clarify
that. Yeah.
It was brutal in the movie too, but it looked cool in the movie.
Right.
So we're talking elbows, throat strikes and knees, and as realistic as you can get, because this is fighting for your life.
No, in the book, it's supposed to represent just like a bunch of people trying to be superheroes, and like
this is what it would be.
It's kind of like how Daredevil is. I like the Daredevil Netflix series because it showed them struggling. It was a knockdown, drag-out fight. It wasn't, we're superheroes.
So when you go from life or death, these are people with mental problems that become vigilantes, which is another deconstruction of the book that I think was lost big time in the movie, or at least lost to a good percent. The slow-mo fights. The fight in the prison scene was the worst example. The hair whip running away from the fire. Moments that made the action cool, when in the book they were never cool at all. In the book, the prison breakout scene when they break out Rorschach was them doing sirens on the ship, running in and almost getting in unscathed. I think they might have knocked out one guy in passing as they're talking to each other, but they turn into a cool fight scene where all of a sudden you have two totally normal people. Again, in Watchmen, only Dr. Manhattan has any sort of powers, and he was a deconstruction on Superman itself. So you have Night Owl, who's an out-of-shape guy, probably at this point, pushing 40, trying to get back into shape to even fight, and you have 115, 120-pound Silk Spectre 2. All of a sudden in the movie, they're taking out all these, gangbangers and hardened criminals in prison. Like it's nothing.
Right.
That was not in the book. All this stuff was not in the book. Zack Snyder didn't understand that Adrian Veidt, while he was of German descent, in the book did not have a German accent.
No.
So one of my main complaints before the movie came out was the actor took upon himself to give himself a German accent, and Snyder said, no. That's going to point out to the audience that, hey, this is the villain, even though we're supposed to keep it a secret. So shit like that, again, Snyder knew just enough to sort of make it 65-70% accurate, but not enough to realize that, hey, the super cool fight scene in the beginning of the movie between Ozymandias, cloaked, and the comedian, that should have been a super cool fight scene with heads and fists somehow bashing through, porcelain and stone walls. It should have been what it was in the book, a brutal beatdown of a depressed guy who knew the world was going to end.
Yeah.
So, again, Snyder missing the mark. So this is the danger of Snyder then having any say in either before Watchmen, or to me it's worse, trying to remake a miniseries and trying to be more accurate, because hell, who knows what the hell he would do then. He shouldn't be anywhere near this property, and I'm not sure why all of a sudden that he's now the guy for Watchmen, just because Warner Brothers want him to direct it. All of a sudden he's the Watchmen guy.
I don't understand why he's the guy for DC.
Well, because he did Watchmen, and then he did Super Man of Steel.
So, anyways,
and I can go off more about changing the ending of Watchmen wasn't the worst thing, considering they had to take out the entire subplot of the artists, and all that. That's fine, but not having the two Bernies talk to each other, eliminating the entire excellent subplot of the psychiatrist and his life, that was a crime. And that's not even in the extended version, that stuff. Well, again, maybe it is something I got to go back and rewatch it, but...
You went off more than I did on Zack Snyder this time.
But I went off on him, again, just knowing enough to be dangerous. He's smart enough to do it well enough to trick people that it's good, but it's not. I mean, that's a pretentious thing I just said, but I don't care, because I love Watchmen.
because in general, taking a certain type of source material, say source material that is action-packed to begin with, right? And you're taking a scene, let's say the prison break scene, okay? Let's say that existed in another, comic, and it was a quick scene in the comic because they need to stick to their page count, and you want to flesh it out and really show it like as something bigger. You can, but that was never what Watchmen was about in the first place.
It wasn't about having cool fights, and it was just an example of them throwing in a cool fight. Or at the end, all of a sudden, Ozymandias almost has superpowers, and he's jumping across the room, and that was never it. No. Ozymandias was a peak human. He didn't have superhuman powers. Shit like that just bothered me.